This handheld. Oh boy, this handheld right here is one of the retro handhelds of all time. Truly, undeniably, indisputably, a retro handheld that exists. And playing on it has been one of the experiences I've ever had. It's the kind of handheld that you could absolutely call a handheld. And if someone asked me if this was a retro handheld, I would honestly say yes. This thing is, without a doubt, a retro handheld, and today I'm gonna make the bold claim that this is not only one of the retro handhelds ever, but if you buy this, you will have it. And then it will not only be one of the retro handhelds that I've ever had, but yours too. Hey there, how's it going? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. This is the RG476H, and I don't want you to get too excited by that name. I know it's an amazingly exciting name. If you're into names that have numbers and letters, this should get your juices flowing. But as interesting as that name is, the device itself is not interesting. However, before you go yawning yourself into a catatonic state, hear me out. I'm going to make the case that this handheld, this RG476H, is one of the retro handhelds ever, which is a roundabout way to say that this is just a retro handheld. No more, no less. It's not remarkable in any specific way. It doesn't have a crazy new form factor that we haven't seen before. It doesn't have some weird new screen technology. It doesn't have AI features or wireless charging or double as a hoverboard. The controls are super standard. Retro aesthetics, same as you'd expect. It's boring in the sense that it does nothing that we haven't seen before, but I'm going to try to convince you today that the fact that this is so unremarkable is what makes it such a good handheld. Because it doesn't need to do anything crazy. This is like the handheld equivalent of a perfectly toasted piece of toast with butter, or a bowl of cornflakes with nice cold milk, or a pair of socks fresh out of the dryer. Nothing wild. It's not the kind of thing you'll be saying, hey, check this out. It's just one of the retro handhelds of all time, and that's why I like it. This was not on my radar at all. I think I remember hearing about it in some early Amberlick videos a while back, but then I forgot about it, and then it just showed up on my door about a week ago. That I was not expecting. I'm pretty sure it was Lit NXT that sent this to me because I talked to them about it, but that was like a while ago, and I don't see this for sale in their store yet, so it might have been Amberlick. I don't know. I can't keep track of this stuff. I'll put some links to some stores in the thingy below if you want to pick one up. At first glance, there's very little that sets this thing apart from the rest of the handheld world. It kind of feels like a combination of several doodads. It most reminds me of the Retroid Pocket 2S, which is a handheld I love with its squarish shape but rounded corners, no ergonomic humps, but with some subtle flared triggers, basic controller layout of course, D-pad up top, face buttons, dual sticks, some Android function buttons over here, start and select, volume up and down, bumpers and triggers, headphone hole, SD card trapdoor, downward firing speakers, and a screen. Obviously, that's where you see your retro games. It has an all-glass front. That's kind of neat, but there's been lots of handhelds that have done the all-glass front at this point. This kind of feels like Amberlick doing their version of a Retroid device or an iNeo device, but like the plain non-gimmicky version. And honestly, from the bottom of my dweeby heart, I love what they did here. I like that it has a plain shape. No weird ergonomic humps that aren't compatible with my hands. No extra paddle buttons around back to get in the way of my fingers. It's just a rounded rectangle with some flared triggers as a place to rest your fingers. I think it feels great. It just instantly kind of felt like home to me. I don't know how else to describe it. It felt so unremarkable, and I immediately realized that's what I've been missing. The controls are actually pretty lovely. Amazing D-pad with great quality inputs. It's nice that we're at the point where basically every Amberlick device has a great D-pad. They just use the same D-pad on everything, which is awesome. I initially felt like the buttons were a tad on the mushy and kind of wiggly side, but I got used to them very quickly and they feel great to me now. Nice big large angle Hall sticks, and these are the standard Retroid style stick caps. So I actually changed out my stick caps for these low profile height sticks, just so it was kind of more pocketable. And speaking of which, it's a bit big in the pocket, but not unmanageable. I can still carry this around in there and still have a bit of room left over for 2 cookies and a Susu Watari. My only gripe with the controls is that I wish that the triggers and bumpers were inline, because it would be more pocket friendly, and it's already pretty darn pocket friendly, so I don't see why we need the flared, but I know lots of people like the flared, so that's neither here nor there. However, also I don't like that the bumpers are actually kind of clicky. They're not crazy loud, but they're the only clicky style control on this thing, and it would be very quiet if they weren't clicky, so I wish they felt a bit more like the buttons. That's it though, the controls are great, and gaming on this thing is lovely. And speaking of gaming, we're not going to talk about gaming yet. Let's talk about the screen. This screen is great for gaming. If you're into retro games, which I assume you are if you're buying a retro handheld. This thing is like perfect because of the screen. 4:3 aspect ratio, which is the aspect ratio of retro games, 1280 by 960 resolution, which is awesome scaling options for most of the retro systems, 120 hertz. If you like black frame insertion, you can use that, and also that's just nice for like a smooth regular use, like browsing your games. And it's big. 4.7 inches, way bigger than most 4:3 retro handhelds, so it feels more like a luxury retro gaming experience that way. Also, it's just a great screen. It's the same screen that we got on the RG slide, and I loved it there. Wonderful color, super crisp and clear. It's not OLED, but it's a great LCD. It's so bright I was playing outside in the daylight, and it gets super dim, so you can turn this down to play in bed at night, if you like to play video games in bed, like a child, instead of doom scrolling YouTube shorts, like a responsible grown-up. Also, since the speakers were downward firing, I was expecting to be underwhelmed by the sound, but I was actually amazed by it. It's super loud, nice and crisp and clear, with a big presence across the whole range. Not super bassy, but bassy enough, and overall it's just well above average sound. And it has a headphone hole. Yay! Yeah. We have a pretty standard build of Android 13 on here, nothing too special. Typical Amberlic customizations, like how you can change the performance profile in the swipe down menu, and there's RBG on the sticks if you're into that sort of thing, which you can control from here. It comes with emulators and Amberlic's normal front end installed, but I always just installed my own stuff. RetroArch for the older systems, PPSSPP for PSP, Dolphin for GameCube, NetherSX2 for PS2, Azahar for 3DS, and Eden for that secret console, which is what I call the Switch, just in case Nintendo wants to go after me. If I don't say the word Switch in my video, they can't do nothing. And I installed ESDE as my front end, and I used my usual Android SD card. I made a video about how I set up Android doodads and how I set up this SD card, so just go watch those videos if you want to know how I did this. And while you're taking orders, you should probably click the subscribe button too, if you haven't yet, because I'm well on my way to 209,000 subscribers, and I'd really like to hit that milestone before next Thursday at 4:47 p.m. When it comes to gaming, this thing is rocking the Unisoc Tiger T820 chip, and it's called that because it has the power of 820 Tigers. 820 Tiger power. That's a lot of Tigers. And you can play a lot of games, but it's not going to play everything that you can on the higher end handhelds. You'll need more Tigers for that. I'm not going to go too deep on the gaming performance here because this is the same chip that we got on the RG slide and the RG476V and the 556, and I tested a bunch of stuff on those doodads, so you can go watch those videos if you want to know more about what this thing can do. The short version is that you'll get a lot of GameCube, maybe like 75% or so, and maybe around half of PS2, all the easy to run stuff and some harder to run stuff, but not the hardest to run stuff. And you can run some stuff at 2x resolution, but lots of stuff you'll need to run at 1.5x or 1x resolution. And obviously some stuff won't run good no matter what you do. So this is going to be one of those situations for GameCube and PS2 that you can get more stuff playable if you want to get into the extra emulator settings and get into underclocking or whatever. So you can squeeze a bit of extra performance out of this if you're okay with tinkering. But don't get this expecting to play a ton of perfect GameCube and PS2. Most 3DS will run pretty good, and the lightweight secret console stuff will run okay, but nothing other than the simpler indie stuff. Don't get this if you want to play lots of Switch. I mean, the secret console. There's better handhelds for that. However, that said, my favoriteest thing to do on this is play the really old stuff. PS1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, Nintendo DS, and all the 2D stuff like NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, Sega Genesis, arcade, DOS games. That stuff is amazing on here because this screen is so big and bright and beautiful, and the controls are great. And also, this is an Android handheld. So you get that amazing Android efficiency, so it feels like it just runs forever. All the stuff that I like to play on here is super lightweight, even if you use upscaling, and you'll get a ton of game time. And Android sleep mode that lets you sleep it even if you're right in the middle of a game and wake it with the push of a button and be back in your game in like 1 second. When you have ESDE installed as your launcher, it really feels like just a super quick, snappy retro handheld, which is what it is. And it feels that way, which is good. Speaking of battery and sleep mode and all that stuff, the battery on this thing is a little champ. It doesn't have as big of a battery as lots of the higher end retro handhelds, but it's also not as powerful. So you get more juice for the squeeze in terms of battery. According to my tests, I was getting about 5 hours while playing GameCube and about 9 hours when playing Nintendo 64 and about 15 hours when playing Game Boy Advance. That's some pretty freaking incredible battery life for the low end stuff, considering that this isn't a big honkin' handheld. It's a slick little thing, so that's good news that you don't have to live with crippling battery anxiety here. However, this is just my extrapolated numbers based on some 30-minute tests, so your mileage may vary, but I think this should be still pretty close to what you'd be getting. So, I mean, there's nothing here that's overly special. And that might be a good or bad thing, depending on how vanilla you want your retro handhelds. It's not super powerful, so if you want crazy good GameCube and PS2 and Switch, Secret Console performance, you should probably get something with more oomph like the RG477M, or even a Retroid, or whatever. There's lots of higher end handhelds to pick from. I love this 476H because it's a no-nonsense handheld. And in a world of flippy screen, dual screen, slidey screen, flip around, mother flippin' flapper floops, in a world where everything needs a gimmick, having a handheld that is just a normal ass handheld that is really good is just what I needed in my life right now. I legit haven't stopped using this since it showed up over a week ago, and it just slotted into my life in a way that very few handhelds do. There's no friction with this thing. It's just a handheld. And if you want just a handheld, this is that. I'm happy Amberlick made this, and I really hope they realize what they did right here and do more of this in the future. This is what we need more of in this world. We need not just one of the retro handhelds of all time, but the most retro handhelds of all time. A new glorious era defined by handhelds that exist proudly as handhelds. Just like how you exist as someone who clicks the thumbs up button on YouTube videos when you like the video.